Are you an old soul? How would you know? Well, in this conversation with my co founder, Jonathan Wilkinson, we talk about, I guess you could say, the tells of old souls. What are the commonalities, the traits that we've seen in our journey of understanding that we are and in the work that we do with other old souls? We also talk about the journey of an old soul, those challenges, that material of liberation that we will meet along the way, how we can journey with that material, those challenges, those wounds more consciously, and how we can meet the others that are meant to journey with us as we walk ourselves back home. This is such a rich and deep conversation. It's kind of one, really, that Jonathan and I have been moving towards for many years to be able to have in such a complete way. If you are an old soul or even suspect yourself to be one, I think you are going to love this. Let's dive in. Hello, Jonathan. Welcome back. Here we are again.
Why, hello there, Lian. It is wonderful to be back and back so soon as well, which is an intention. Clearly, we are co-creating together. So, yeah, it feels really good to be back.
And I was pondering just before we started recording that it's both just actually can't feel a topic that is more aligned, more significant, more of ourselves. And yet I was also thinking, isn't it funny that we've not done a show on this topic specifically ever before?
Yeah, as you're saying that, I was connected to maybe only a handful of times, but times where we felt similarly, where it's something that's so deeply us, who we are, what we're here for, yet we haven't, in this capacity at least, honored it energetically. So, yeah, it is. It does feel overdue, but of course, I'm sure and I trust that it's perfect in its timing.
Yes. So we're going to talk about all things old souls, who they are, what the journey can be like, the challenges, what's needed. But shall we start simply by, I guess, defining each of us in our own way? What do we mean by an old soul? And if so, would you like to go first with that?
Sure. Yes, and as I'm about to, I think we did touch on this in the last show, but again, this feels something that is so needed for us to keep coming back to. So, so an old soul for me really represents a soul that has come here with really deep work, has, I think importantly is to state they have chosen to come here, to live this life in this body in such a way that it will unfold. And therefore it doesn't mean that it's all completely fated. They have their personal will to be able to work with that, but they have chosen to journey in this way. And more than likely, they have journeyed many times before in many different lifetimes as well. And there's a real depth to them. You know, when you meet a fellow old soul, you can just feel a depth in their eyes, their ancient eyes, their not always, but there is often a sense of meeting a kin, and maybe a sense that you've journeyed with them before. But I think those are two of the key ones: the fact that you've journeyed in many lifetimes, and you've chosen to come here with some really significant work to do, and you have a real I think I'll finish just on this one point. Otherwise, I won't leave much for you to speak into. But what the one that this came through then is a deep reverence for life. And now that may not always be possible based on where you are in the current unfolding of your life here as an old soul. But one thing that we certainly see time and time again with old souls is this deep reverence for life, this sense of honoring the sacredness of life. And yeah, I'll pause on that one, Lian.
It's funny because we've clearly had conversations of this kind many, many times before. But there was something when you were talking about when you look into the eyes, the ancient eyes of a fellow old soul, you know it. And it brought to mind this memory that I don't think has ever come up when we've had this conversation before. And it brought tears to my eyes. And it was, I think, a day or so after my son was born. And as you know, it was a very, very challenging birth, traumatic even. And then after he was born, there were sort of challenges as well in terms of, he was dehydrated. And so there was just a lot of intensity. And there was this particular moment, maybe a day or so after he's been born, it was just he and I. And I had him in my arms and I had this moment of like fully locking eyes with him, like looking deep into his eyes, and just had this moment of just knowing of that connection that went way beyond this lifetime. This just familiarity, that recognition of like, oh, there you are. That I wasn't expecting, I wasn't looking for into that moment when it was there. And I was like, oh, it's there, it's that. And that when you talked about it, I brought that memory back of that moment where I just knew something that was beyond. And that was back in the day where it was, before really I'd kind of like woken up to the knowing of myself as an old soul.
You could say that was part of the awakening experience for you, if I remember.
It certainly was. It really, as you were talking, I was sort of taken back to that moment and how significant that was in my journey and in the unfolding of everything that happened.
Talk about a rite of passage, like you said, like that. You went through that rite of passage to then have that moment, that meeting of souls. Like, yeah, just I'm fortunate and blessed to know Felix well, and he is most certainly an old soul. And Lian and Felix are cut from the same cloth. Clearly, they're. I'm just saying this for people. They're mother and son, but boy, are they just so energetically similar. And that I've still got chills on my arms now, Lian, just from you saying that, because I felt I was there for a moment, just witnessing that spark of union that happened in that moment. And so I love that is what ignited in you, because yeah, I have a sense that if we connected the dots looking back, that was one of those pivotal moments in the awakening of your old soul.
Yes, which I think something definitely we need to touch on, that kind of like those moments, moments of knowing ourselves as an old soul. I think that's something important for us to come back to. But of course, not all those moments of meeting a fellow old soul and looking into their eyes are going to have like, that level of like...
Sometimes it's the opposite. It's hate, disgust,
yes,
repulsion.
It's funny, actually. I was talking to one of my close friends about something like this last week. And I was talking to her about my understanding of kind of incarnation and sort of soul families and things like that. And I was saying, we may come back within a sort of pod, let's say, of old souls that we reincarnate back with in different lifetimes, in different roles. And she said, like, what might we have been? And I was like, well, we might have been husband and wife, or brother and sister, or enemies. And then she laughed. She said, do you remember when we first met? I didn't like you. Maybe I was remembering the lifetime we were enemies.
Very much so, yeah. Yeah, we've joked, not joked, but joked from a place of feeling the truth of it, of how you will have razed cities to the ground in your past. And that, I think, like I said, is a key thing for old souls, is they don't come here to just journey in positive ways. Part of their growth, part of their experience that is beyond, in many ways, what we can conceive upon, is energetically being on both poles. So we can arrive at that union. And yeah, I don't believe there's many old souls I've felt into that haven't had that kind of, as you feel into their ancient eyes, that branching off into the many different ways of living life, to have that full, really, I suppose, experience of being human as an old soul as well. So I love that you took it there, and I think that's a huge part of this.
And of course, will absolutely contribute to much of what we experience as wounding. Some of that wounding may have occurred in this lifetime, or maybe be a version of things we've experienced in past lives that we're here to experience in a particularly symbolic way in this lifetime. It's not to get into all of, that's a whole huge topic in itself, past lives, but it's important to recognize, we've seen time and time again with our students, the way they will kind of hold back from the full embodiment of their power for fear of doing things, doing damage, creating harm that perhaps they created in previous lives. So again, so many different things, like just in this part of the conversation that I'm seeing, like, it's important that we at least touch on in this conversation. So there's something that just is coming to me in this moment that feels important to touch upon, and it's that kind of knowing oneself as an old soul, and how that in itself can be quite confronting, can bring all kinds of resistance, fear, grandiosity, grasping, all the different ways that we can relate to absolutely anything, and perhaps this more than anything. And I want to start first with just mentioning, you said something like when you feel into old souls. And as certainly people who have journeyed with us in crucibles before will know, you have like an incredible sensitivity to being able to recognize people, their gifts, their magic, their medicine in certain ways. And my sense, I don't think we've actually talked about it in this way before, but my sense is that absolutely includes just being able to see someone and know they're an old soul in a way I don't think is typical. I don't think most of us, we may kind of have that moment of recognition eye to eye with an old soul, but my sense is you are here to kind of recognize them even outside of that kind of one-to-one context. I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
Yes, well, I certainly agree with that, and that feels true to me, deeply true to me. And I think it's different for each individual based on the gifts they've chosen to come here with, how much they have access to that. But yes, on that level, that certainly has been the case for me. That there is that, and I think this is, as I was pausing a moment to feel in, I was taken to the series Man in the High Castle, which is an incredible series, highly recommended. But it's very much about these different dimensions of people, the same characters, the same soul pods living different lives, and they kill each other, and like her lovers, fathers, mothers, etc. But there's definitely something that when I'm in the presence of an old soul, I feel that that branching out almost into the timelines of how they've journeyed and how they are to me. And it's it really is a beautiful thing. It can be a concerning thing at first, going back to what you were saying, because this is where our gifts suddenly start to come online. We can see ourselves as being different, because that's another key sign of being an old soul. You feel like either you don't fit in, or you're just a bit weird, or you're different, or you feel that however you want to express, or what you feel doesn't seem to be the status quo. And I was just, the reason I bring that up is I felt into school about how I hid a lot of that. I hid a lot of those sensitivities. And then over time, the more I embraced them, the more I lovingly and openly opened myself to them, the more they came online. And that, as you know, is only growing and growing and growing, just as for you, the same is with your gifts. And so, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful blessing. It really is to be able to feel that in the way I've chosen.
What occurred to me before we began recording, as I was just pondering this notion of old souls and what we might journey into, I had this moment of recalling when you and I, it's like we've sort of circled around this for many, many, many years. And then it's fairly recently that we've started to um, more consciously and certainly more publicly use that term old souls. That's actually fairly recent that we've started to certainly do that more regularly. That is something that we may have mentioned, but it's certainly something that it's much more recent that we've been doing that in that much more sort of conscious public way. And I was recalling the difference it made for me personally as I was finally ready to kind of like, oh, that's who I am. That's what I am. That's why we are here to serve the old souls. And I think there's a funny paradoxical challenge for many of us who are different in the ways that we're talking about. There can also be this sense of not wanting to sort of seem grandiose in that difference. It's like, certainly for me, it's like I'm okay to recognize all the ways I've been challenged by the way that I'm different, and yet to own it and say, therefore, I am this, felt like something that would just seem sort of like grandiose or delusional, like I'm trying to make myself special. And there was something about, and I think that absolutely can be what's going on. Even if it's true, we can have wounding around the thing that, even if it is true, but there was something interesting about that recognition of myself as an old soul that kind of like went deeper than all of that. It's like, while some of that was still, perhaps present, there was something like cut right through all of this where it's just like, I can't really deny it. Even though there is still challenge in me naming that and expressing it, it feels as though this, and I remember saying this to you at the time, it feels as though it's almost like a call to arms. I remember using the phrase, even when we were talking about rebranding as Be Mythical, I got told by my guides very clearly, like, stand up for what you stand for. And it was one of those moments of recognition, like, if I stand for anything, it's old souls knowing themselves as that and living as that. Because that's what's happened for me. And I don't think there's anything that could have created the expansiveness, the invitation, the freedom, the safety compared to that.
Oh, yeah. So much in that. I'm so pleased you shared that, and what I felt various different things at various different points, but what I really felt was this this cross point, that point of unification of some degree, where you unified with the truth of who you were and what you came here for, and just the sheer beauty in that, and that the passion, the ignition, the fire in your soul, in your belly, in your heart of, wow, just like a mother protecting a child, just like the fierceness and the sovereignness that kind of comes from that. I really just felt all the kind of emotions and power in you, and like really appreciating that timeline as I deeply and intimately do, how those points came together there. But yeah, I felt. Everything you said, I think was just so on point, and I feel will be for so many of our listeners, depending on where they are in the journey, something they can really have felt and experienced themselves. And it's that feeling that ultimately fuels the journey, because if you don't have that connection, you won't be able to meet the material for liberation that you've called in for yourself. And so it's like, this is the sacred perfection of life for old soul. This is the real beauty, that when we can kind of see that and unify with that, it allows us to meet even the most challenging of things we have come here for. And not just meet it with love, meet it with the most intense power we can summon, with the deepest honor and reverence. Like that's living right there. And without that connection to who you are, what you come here for, the fact that you're an old soul, aside from divine intervention, I know of no examples where someone has lived their myth, has really realized what they came here for without. So that really brought to life for me the full potency of the energetics of an old soul.
So we've definitely touched on this, but it feels important to talk about this very directly. And there's clearly very unique aspects of this, but at a more general level, this is almost like going part to this, like, why is it important to know someone's an old soul at like a more specific level? I think there's a question that's, why are old souls, like, why have they incarnated in this lifetime? What's the reason? Like, what are they here for? And again, at a sort of general level, clearly there's a uniqueness in that, which is, the work we do in crucibles like medicine. But more generically, it's not really the nicest word to use in the same sentence as an old soul, but what do you see old souls are here to do in this lifetime?
So, first of all, the vast majority of the reasons I'll just say are beyond what I believe we're meant to be aware of in this life. I mean, that really stems to the beginning of an old soul's journey in, let's just say, the body they're in while they're listening to this, is they forget it all. We come here and we forget who we are, what we've come here for, and part of that journey is to awaken to that truth, to be brought into union with who we are. And so for me, as much as my journey is like yours to really help guide and support and lead in where aligned old souls on their journey, there is, so much that's beyond my pay grade in terms of the whys behind this. But ultimately, I believe it is to have an experience of love. So I'll speak to from this way, and maybe we can unpack this or take it somewhere else. But this feels where the most aligned place is. We come from love. We come from a place of real deep divine love to really experience that fully and expansively. And we come down into this densely earthly plane. And I love how Ram Dass describes dying as like taking off an old shoe. It's because we're really experiencing a sense of density and disconnection, diversity. And so essentially it's the wound. And so this is where, for me, old souls, this is a key point, is they come here with a wound. So we come here with a separation from the truth of who we are, with a wound to work through to arrive at union, to arrive at love, at an experience of love in this earthly form. And I believe our journeys as an old soul compound and inform one another, but ultimately it's a journey of returning to truth through the material for liberation we've come here to learn. And collectively, for all the old souls that are going through life in all the different ways we are, the greater meaning is beyond what I can conceive of. But feeling into it purely from the individual old soul's perspective, that seems to be the commonalities that we see consistently. It's a journey of experiencing challenge, experiencing the deep wounds, both personal, cultural, societal, and being able to meet that in a way where they can unify in love and many other ways. But I'm going to put a pin in that for now because that can go there. But for me, those are some of the common threads that are always consistent. Now, there are many others we can speak to that aren't always consistent, but are there for many others. But I think those are, like I said, some of the main ones at least.
So I agree with all of that. And then it raised this probably quite autistic question in me, which is...
They're the best.
It's like, well, therefore, at what point do we call an old soul, as in, like, were they an old soul in their last lifetime? And I felt like it was important to distinguish really the conversation we're having here the conversation we're in more broadly with old souls in all the work we do is because they're in a particular lifetime where they've come to journey through, experience what you're talking about here, which may not have been true in, even though they could have still been described as an old soul in the lives leading up to this one. So something specific about the particular life that an old soul is in, and that they're really ready to make conscious everything we're talking about here, including knowing themselves as an old soul. It also was making me kind of reflect on what I also noticed about old souls who, again, have come to know themselves and to really do the great work in this lifetime. It's most of the time, and there's almost certainly going to be exceptions to this, but most of the time, they've also come here to be medicine, to serve others, to be ultimately a model, an emanation, a messenger of love to others. They have to do the work that you spoke about first. They have to find that union within first, or certainly be in the work of that. But there is also, they've come here to be of service to others. And more likely than not, that's the case, I would say. Would you agree?
Brilliant. Yeah, definitely. And this is where the wounded healer comes in. And part of healing ourselves is through healing others. And there are old souls who we've come into contact with who maybe, it feels clear to us that we're here to work with old souls that are here to be a force for good in this life. We are aware of old souls that we have met that isn't the case. That's what they've chose, but they're not aligned for us to work with. And so there are many different paths there. And there's also in this, whatever we want to call this illusion that is life, there are these background souls. There are these souls that maybe aren't here they're playing supporting roles in some shape or form. And speaking specifically to those who are here to be a force for good, that are here to be their medicine and have their medicine ripple out into the world and create deep service. It's those that, yes, are like you were saying, clearly here with medicine and really aligned with everything that was spoken to, but there is those who aren't. But yeah, it's normally quite clear where which side of the fence they're on, isn't it? And whether it's usually very obvious whether they're a background soul or some other different kind of soul rather than the old soul we're speaking to. Yeah, I'll pause on that one because I could unravel that quite a bit more.
So perhaps let's talk a little bit, and we certainly would have mentioned this so many other times in so many other ways, but we've mentioned this feeling of difference, this feeling of potentially a lifetime that has a greater challenge than is average. Perhaps I should spend a little bit longer talking about some of the ways that we've noticed an old soul might know themselves, almost like the tells of old souls.
Yeah, as you were speaking, then I was feeling, and in fact, before I say that, I also want to just touch on the significance of the word old soul in this new world, because the contrast for me has never been greater. We have leaped forward in the last 100 years, almost like unrecognizably, from the material that an old soul was presented with on their journey in this lifetime. And so that those poles between the old and the new, being the old soul and the new world, I think is really important just to highlight that for a moment, because we can't speak forever anymore, but at least the history we're aware of, never have we faced such a time where our environment is so radically different than our nature and the challenge that calls in to it. So coming back to your question about the commonalities of an old soul, how they can know that themselves and in others. there's usually always the presence of a calling of their soul. And that can be the call of themselves to be a bit of a hermit, to go within, to go ultimately on a rite of passage. And you can say an old soul's life is a never-ending rite of passage in certain degrees of intensity. And as I kind of paused to reflect there for a moment, I really felt in personally for myself, was that call to the wild? Was that call to the vision quest? Was that call to challenge? Was that call to just that hunger, that thirst to know myself, to understand what life is itself? And that that for me has been very much that journey of the sage, a philosopher, very much an action philosopher in that way. And I feel ultimately there is that commonality of that soul's call to meet material for liberation, to really inquire, to contemplate, to journey with what is true, that question. And for me personally, that happened very much with regards to the wild and understanding the human body. Going back, I can link mine nicely into the wound. So for me, I chose to come into this life with great physical and health challenges, which make it incredibly challenging and present me with a great deal of pain and suffering. And for me, what I've chose for myself in this lifetime is to really be with the beauty, the sacred perfection of life in really challenging situations. And I have a real gift to be love and to have people experience love in many forms. But the real material for me is to do that while being in pain, while being in suffering, while feeling the density, while feeling all of that, and exploring and illuminating the ways in which I can work with that material for liberation. But I'd love to hear from your perspective as well, being autistic, as we know, that's also a strong commonality when it comes to certain old souls, how that maybe looks and has felt to you.
Yes, and it's funny because, as you know, the knowing of myself, I mean, I'll start more broadly and then talk about myself in this. So certainly what we've seen over the years is that neurodivergence of some kind is incredibly common for old souls, to the point where I'd say some type of neurodivergence is almost always present. They may not know that. It may be something that they've just struggled with but not had a label for. And of course, all of this is beyond labels anyway. This is just the modern world's attempt to try and put these things into boxes and to, see them as disorders, to treat them. So it's not necessarily that all old souls will have a diagnosis or even know they have a neurodivergence. But what we've certainly seen in the work that we've done with people, the more they journey into consciously knowing themselves, then they'll start to know those neurodivergences, they will start to become known. And often they will be things like autism, but they don't necessarily have to be. They can also be things like, and again, these are just modern labels for something way beyond that, it could be ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, the whole gamut. And as you know, for me, the knowing of myself as neurodivergent predated all of the work we do. I had some sense of being neurodivergent before I even had language for that word decades ago. And then, I've spoken a lot on the podcast before, the journey of knowing myself as autistic, having the diagnosis. But even that, to an extent, there was this conscious knowing of myself as an old soul, I think really came even after that knowing myself as autistic. I think all of these things were facets and clues, really. And I think that's important to recognise, because in this modern world, our understanding of neurodivergence is so far away from the truth of what it really represents. And so it can be one of the most powerful portals into knowing who we really are. When we start to, it's like there's this portal of neurodivergence, which in itself is again only a modern term that's representing something far deeper. But there's this like portal of neurodivergence, but it's like got this illusionary door over the top that is like, this is a disorder, this is a problem, this is something, you know, that only has struggle. And then as we start to see what that portal really is and journey into it consciously, it likely will end with that understanding at some point. I say end as in like somewhere along that we'll reach this place of, oh my goodness, this is not really about me being autistic. This is about who I really am and what I came here for in this lifetime.
And ultimately the gifts as well, because that's, as we know, anybody with any type of neurodivergence is just an illumination of a gift. And in this modern world, it's probably never been illuminated so powerfully because it's such at odds with where we are at the moment. But yes, like it's a huge. As you was talking, then I was just feeling into. Have I ever met someone who is neurodivergent who isn't an old soul? And I couldn't think of one. Not one came to mind. But I'm sure there's always exceptions, but it's like, yeah, and there's so many different types of neurodivergence. Take us a long time to list them all. And so if you're listening to this and you have a sense that, oh no, I'm not neurodivergent, there may be, even if it's just being dyslexic or something like that, like that's a form of neurodivergence. But yeah, there are few old souls that don't have some form of neurodivergence, because ultimately that's the key. Like you were speaking to, that's the portal. That's what can open their sensory capacity up to what is true for them, and therefore what is true for their myth with regards to other people. And so, yeah, it's a biggie.
So I think we're coming up on time, but there's still some really important things I think that are here to be explored. So we've touched on the challenges of this modern world and how they will actually make being an old soul perhaps even more challenging, but also that this modern world is bereft of understanding of the particular kind of myth that old souls have come to live out. It's also bereft of role models. There's very few old souls who are living fully embodied and expressed. We are bereft of true elders. We are bereft of guides and mentors. And so it makes the challenges that old souls have already, chosen to come here in this particular lifetime, in this particular time of the world to experience, it amplifies, exacerbates those challenges even more, because as you and I both know, you don't even know what you're looking for. The path itself isn't even it's not even that you know that you're looking for a particular path, because it's not spoken about. It's not shown. And so I think that would be the place for us to talk about now, because so many people who, perhaps particularly if this is the first show they've listened to that we've done before, there is something really important to recognize, like there is a path, there is a way. And it's completely understandable that that's not been present before. So I'd love to hear your sense on that.
Yeah, as you were speaking there, I was feeling into, and specifically people in the West predominantly, or people, let's say, in countries where they aren't at physical war. I had there's that real deep appreciation of how people who are neurodivergent are experiencing different challenges that they've never experienced before because of their environment playing into that. And there's, I think, as well, for me, it's I know I think we touched on this in the last podcast, is with these changing times and not having the absolute just imperativeness of role models, of guides, of spirits to help guide and support them, being able to illuminate that is why we have things such as the Gene Keys, such as human design, such as all these other things that are presenting themselves to be able to illuminate to old souls the journey, because gone is the village, gone are the elders for the most part, gone are the medicine men and women, the sages, And I was just about to go into what's in their place, but let's not open that door. But certainly, it's really, really challenging right now. But in many ways, we've never been so richly resourced with information if we listen to the call, if we listen to that soft beckoning voice of our soul, which or not, as we often describe to it, it can come as a tug at the shirt cuff or a punch in the gut. It can be that visceral. But it was just really appreciating the changing landscapes, but how, as ever, spirit is meeting old souls with precisely what they need, even if the trajectory, the territory seems to be shifting. The direction of travel, the journey we are here to arrive at, is still really the same. Certainly feels that way for me.
Yes, it's like the reason we've come here in some ways is no different. It's just what that looks like in terms of unfolding our myth has changed because the landscape's changed. Like as ever, context is everything. So I guess really that's brought us really nicely to really why we created Unio. That was something that, it arose from contemplations, work that we've done, seeing what's needed, seeing what's missing. That's really what brought us ultimately to create Unio, our Academy of Sacred Union for old souls in this new world. So, hit me with it. Tell me your sense as to your experience of that, what we are providing with Unio and why we're providing it.
So, at the simplest level, it is just to meet what has been asked of all souls in these times, and what is so sadly scarce in these times. And like I said, there's an abundance of information. Of course, we're living, or should we say now, probably transitioning out of the information age. But with that comes great challenge, just overwhelm, we know, we've been on this journey for decades, trying to find the teachers, the guides, the sages, the mystics, people who have walked this path, people who are on deeply this path and can share this, but ultimately to, and we touched on this again in the last podcast, but it's certainly worth coming back to find your, whatever you want to call them, a soul part, soul family, your kin, the people you chose to journey here with, because there are very few instances of people doing this on their own, very few. And even if they do, there'll come a point where that solitude ends, and therefore they emerge from their cave with the wisdom to give that lovingly and willingly to the world. And Unio, the creation of that has been the most magical, mythical unfolding for us, and has been a deep call that we've been answering in many ways. And it's only really felt that really we're ready. Me and you, ultimately that's the reason we haven't created this before. We've done lots of versions of it, but not to this magnitude, not to this level of potency, not to in many ways meet it with this level of completeness, to have an old soul essentially enter the doors of Unio and feel like they're coming home, feel like they're seeing their fellow old souls. And talking of old souls, I can hear Shunker crying in the background, if you can hear him. Shunker's my dog, by the way. He's feeling the soulful vibes. But that was there before. This is the thing, like, it's nothing where we are energetically honoring is new, where this really is ancient ways alchemized for modern days. But this is what has been so deeply lacking, and has been our life's work to arrive at this very point to be able to be in a place to meet old souls, to bring old souls together in union on their journey, and have them have the tools, as we say, to put in their soul backpack on their journey. Because the one thing we do know is life is a journey. And so to fulfill this adventure, this journey of life, requires certain, it's like a video game, isn't it, really? Like collect certain jewels at certain levels. That's very much what we've baked into Unio, is precisely the right medicine, the energy, the material to meet them on this journey. And I'm going to pause there because I'd love you to share more on that. But that's just, again, the immediate energies that come to mind when I just feel into Unio, why it's here, and why now is the time that it's being birthed.
What's just come to mind is I saw a post from one of the old souls in Unio this morning, which was gorgeous. It was she was sharing a dream she'd had, and it was about an in-person gathering of Unio old souls coming together to, be together, work together, play together, and it's so captured the energy of Unio. And often, as we know, old souls, they are become so attuned to the symbols of their dreams, but also in visions, in their work with, say, the tarot, and the way that we start to dream a myth together. Again, we really see Unio not as our, we don't own it. We sort of part own it with the students. This is absolutely a shared myth that we're dreaming together. And that just came to mind because I think that's such an important aspect of this. This certainly is not for us, just a course or just a membership. It's so far from that. It almost I think it took me remembering that dream to say, it really is not just that. If we're giving any impression that this is just some, online thing, my goodness, energetically, it is a coming together of old souls to do their deepest soul work, meet their kin, become their medicine, live their myth. It really is all of that, which even as I say it, I think is that really something we're able to do, able to pull off? And yes, we are, because one, as you said, we weren't ready before. We really weren't ready. I'm really happy to, this isn't just a kind of faux modesty. Everything we've done brought us to this point where this is now possible, but it's also only possible because there are enough old souls waking up to who they are and are ready to come together and be part of co-creating this. It is the only way that can happen. So that felt really just there to be said. What else feels important to say is, and it just comes back again to at the heart really of so much of what we do is about people becoming their medicine, which is really first and foremost requires the alchemy of their own wounds into medicine, first for themselves and then for others. And what we realized over the years is a huge part of our own medicine is to do that, is to help other old souls to be their medicine and to live their myth. But of course, other old souls, that's not going to be their medicine. They're going to have their own unique myth, their own unique medicine. They're here to discover and to become and to serve. And what's become increasingly clear to us is, yes, there is absolute power in exploring all these other aspects of ourselves as old souls, how we show up in relationship, how we, how we parent, how we, I've sort of gone blank. I can't think of other aspects of life at the moment because I'm so obsessed with being your medicine. But there's obviously lots of things that people can do, and they are all important. They're all aspects of living our myth. And yet, what you and I have seen over the years, there is literally nothing that will bring us face to face with the very material for our liberation as becoming our medicine. to understand who we really are and who we're here to serve and how we're here to serve them. And so whilst the work we do in Unio might be looking at, aspects around that union with the wild, union with another, all these different ways that we journey with people into becoming who we are, really at its heart, we sometimes say, oh, it's a magic school because you are going to learn magic. It's a place to come together, like with your kin. But really at the heart of it, the jewel in the crown is to help people to be their medicine and serve people in their community in whatever way they have chosen, going back to that word chosen to become in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the alchemy right there. This is all about providing the right alchemy that allows each old soul to alchemize, to actualize, to maturate into what they came here to be. And that's, like we said, that's not changed. These are very much ancient days, alchemized for modern days, and they are so, so needed. But yeah, as you were saying, this is... This is so important to experience, again, speaking from the challenge, because we could talk about all of the elements, the features that are the material that's within Unio, of what it serves. But really, I think the most powerful thing is the feeling, the experience it gives. And when it allows you to have the most profound experience of beauty, of unity, of love, of belonging, of being home, knowing who you are and what you're here for. That is, if there is anything to have someone just have a taste of, to meet what they're here for in life, it is that. And I think that is what, is at the core of everything we do. And that is the most powerful thing for Unio, because it's getting harder and more challenging to have those experiences outside as an integrated part of this domesticated, socialized modern world. And those potent touch points are everything. Speaking personally, professionally, that's what really matters. This is what, when we're having our life review at the end of our old soul journey, either before we pass or if we're coming back after a near-death experience. It's these moments in time, these moments where we had a choice or we had an experience and we really touched the quintessence, the absolute purity, the divinity of life, of what it means to be a human in this world, and we helped serve someone or meet someone. That's what it's about at the end of the day. That's what we carry forward. That's what we leave behind. That really is energetically everything, and is so at the forefront, at the core of what Unio is, as like we're coming back to, because sadly or somewhat perfectly, it's the thing that we're most bereft of.
So this is the first time we've been in a position to say this on the podcast, but the doors of Unio are now open.
To the general public.
To everyone.
General public, to all souls, should I say. Yes, not the general public, but for those of you who are...
That's worse than when I said any old soul at the end of the last one.
I went to say it, and then that's when I flipped it for that, and I'm like, no. We're just saying any old soul is there. But the reason we're saying that is because there has been a select group of alumni, well, not select, just an open group of alumni that we've been journeying with so far. And by the time this is in your ears, or you're watching this on YouTube or whatever platform, it is now open to all old souls. And this just feels we've wasted. We have waited many lifetimes for this moment, and it is here. And I'm so thrilled.
Yeah, it just felt delightful even just to say those words. It really did. So, if you have listened to this or watched this and heard yourself in it, we would love you to come join us in Unio. So, as we've said, we've been, and if you've been following the podcast since January, who'd have heard me say that we really were opening Unio kind of slowly and in phases, because we really wanted to make sure that we could co-create the right energetic, we could really understand what was being called for, that we could make sure that was really woven into the fabric of Unio before we started to open it more widely. And that's absolutely what we've been journeying with. And we are now at the point where, oh my goodness, we are so ready to welcome the old souls who are aligned to come journey with us in Unio. So the link for that is unioacademy.com. unioacademy.com. Unio spelled UNIO, and it actually means union in Latin. Because again, as you've heard us mention now so many times, we are all about union. Union of many different kinds, many different ways that shows up, but ultimately union with our own soul. So if you are listening to this, so our intention is to release this, I believe, next week. So that's the week commencing. Do you know what the date for Monday is? 25th?
Not without checking my calendar.
Yes, 25th. Yes. So the week commencing the 25th. This episode should be in your ears and eyes. And the reason I'm saying that is the sooner you join it before the next ceremony on the 9th of April, the more you'll be able to really understand all of that's on offer in Unio, get yourself settled in, ready to join us for that first community ceremony that's going to be, again, for anyone then that's aligned to join us. So, of course, you can join us after that, but my recommendation would be, as soon as you hear that, jump in and join us before the 9th of April so that you can join us for that opening community ceremony. Anything you'd like to add, Jonathan?
I mean, the invitation is clearly there, but I would love to just invite anyone listening, anyone watching, anyone hearing, feeling our words, my words in this moment, to just take a pause and drop into that beautiful old soul of yours and ask it, is it aligned for me to join Unio? Are my soul family in Unio? Is the medicine that is aligned for me awaiting in Unio? And see what comes back. Nothing comes back, then honor that. If something presents itself, pull on that thread. See where it leads you. And if it leads you to the doors of Unio, you will be welcomed, deeply welcomed, with love, with the greatest of honor and blessed reverence. And we look forward, if it's aligned, to your arrival and the deep blessing to journey with you. And I can't emphasize how much of a blessing it is to have that honor to journey with old souls. It's the most incredible thing for us, and just that. And yeah, I think that's all that wants to be said on that one, Lian.
So, thank you so much to everyone listening and watching. And again, we would love to see you in Unio if it's aligned for you to do so. And either way, to honour and bless you as the old soul that you are. Until next time, Jonathan.
Until next time, Lian.
I very much hope you enjoyed watching that. And if you did and you're not already subscribed, then do hit that bell thingy and subscribe to automatically get each fresh new episode as it's released each week. If you'd like to find out more about the work we do at Be Mythical to guide and support old souls in this new world to live their own unique myth, do hop along to bemythical.com and you'll find out all the ways you can join us and go deeper with us on your own mythical journey. Lots of love for now. Mwah. See you again next week.